Thank you. So, the topic today is about investing in tomorrow's health. This is a topic I think that's quite salient here in Hong Kong, and especially in that of Canada. I think there's a lot of questions about, how do we actually invest, make money, and actually make the world a better place. And the intersection between Canada and Hong Kong is actually quite critical. How do we actually tap into these opportunities without stepping into large minefields? So this is something that, here we have a panel of experts, PhDs, all of them except for me. So I'm gonna let them speak much more to it. So quickly, I'll give a quick introduction about myself. It's a pleasure to serve as governor of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I'm also managing partner of Salterton Ventures. We run Series A, Series B, and Series C in deep technology, covering life sciences, artificial intelligence, and clean tech. Most of the coverage is around the Pacific Rim and also in Canada. And second to that is that I was appointed by our recent Prime Minister as the APEC representative of Canada, not Hong Kong. And in there, I'm also the chair of food security. So there is a lot of intersection between Canada, Asia Pacific, and I think research, technology, and know-how. And so, again, please excuse my voice. I am a walking pharmacy, and I am right now going through a personal drug discovery phase, which is a lot less enjoyable than that of what I do for work. So with that, I'll speak a lot less, and I'll pass it to my colleagues here on the panel. Jack, please, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Joseph. My name's Jack Fairbank, and CEO of Hylid Diagnostics, which has been in business for about 4 years now. And we're developing blood testing instruments for the home, which is, I think, something that we do very well, and with laboratory quality that you'd normally see coming out of a hospital lab. And I think what we can do really well is help people with chronic disease to help themselves and reduce the burden on the healthcare system, but also to improve patients' lives, help them to understand their disease, reduce the progression of their disease, and make themselves better.
So Jack, really quickly, I'm going to interject. I've known you for a while. You are too humble because I know that you're a senior executive at Siemens and Abbott. You quit that to start your own startup. Right. And this startup has been claimed and been asked, and you were asked a lot, how is this different from Theranos? Because Theranos, as everyone knows, is an abject failure. But what do you do better, or is it in a different category?
Yeah. Theranos is in a different category. I mean, you might have noticed all the ex-military generals and people like that on the board, and not people like Isaac and Jimmy here who know what they're talking about. So they promised hundreds of tests from a droplet of blood. At Siemens, for instance, we made a device called the EPOC, which is used by hospitals around the world. I think selling about 20 million tests these days. But it uses a more sensible 90 microliters of blood, which is a few droplets, and gives you about 14 measures of different concentrations of analytes in your blood. So it's actually approved in many different places around the world, and it's actually used by hospitals and by clinicians to make clinical decisions for their patients. And actually, behind the black curtain at Theranos were a number of the instruments that we had worked on. So, but given far too little blood and diluted blood. So anyway, yeah.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah. Over to Emmanuel.
Thank you. My name is Emmanuel. I run the Tiger Jade Pebble Accelerator. We just call it Pebble for short. We are basically Hong Kong's only early stage, life science focused, Hong Kong dedicated holding company, actually, because we invest out of our balance sheet, but most importantly, we are all about helping Hong Kong professors commercialize their technologies and their innovations. In this process, we also help a lot of best foreign companies come to Hong Kong to enter the Chinese market. We also help Chinese companies to come to Hong Kong to go abroad. So we're really leveraging Hong Kong as a platform to do what it has been doing best for over 100 years, which is to be a bridge between the East and West. And so why me, right? Why am I in this position? Because I've had that experience myself building companies from scratch. Right? I was a senior at Dartmouth when I started a company with 2 professors, and then we went public in 2020 in Korea. So I've been through that process myself of building a company in the gene therapy space. And then coming back to Hong Kong, I was investing my own money into different professors' projects for like a year or so. And then TigerMed, which is the largest clinical CRO in China, basically found out about me and was like, hey, why don't we join forces and make this a more official thing? And so Tiger Jade Capital, which is a TigerMed's US dollar fund in Hong Kong, ends up writing the first check. And then other funds also joined in. So Namfeng, Morningside, Dai Hongfei, and of course, Dr. Chen Fong here, who's with Saltogen as well, is also one of our shareholders. And so I learn a lot and co-invest with Joseph as well. And so it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really here to share about what we're doing in making Hong Kong to become a true hub of biomedical innovation. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Emmanuel. You are an asset to Hong Kong, and it's been a pleasure working with you. I don't use the word genius often, but this guy really is one of the few ones that I've met. And so, you're also on the clinical ethics board in Hong Kong, which I think is a very important regulatory agency at the forefront of what's making Hong Kong, different on the world stage for medical regulations as well, too. So thank you, Emmanuel. Lastly, I want to pass it to Nir, who's on the virtual side. Maybe you can give an introduction and also what you do as well.
Everybody, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Neil Kaczynski. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Pulse Medica. And we're essentially the only company in the world who is developing a treatment for eye disease and specifically looking at treating eye floaters. So I usually like to be in the audience to kind of ask the audience who has heard of eye floaters and who have eye floaters. And typically about 50% of individuals raise their hand and say, I have eye floaters. And so, in fact, 50% of the population have eye floaters, and to date, there's really nothing out there for diagnostics or an non-invasive treatment. And we're building a system that does image-guided laser treatment to treat eye floaters.
Thank you, Nir. I think your product has a lot of potential here in Asia. I know for myself is that I've already done LASIK, PRK. Floaters are coming up, so that's why I want to be one of your first clients as well once it's on the stage. So it really goes to show the capacity and the capability of Canadian tech and startups. So thank you for joining us on the panel. So with that, I kind of want to kick it off with the first topic. And let's keep it real in that it's about what are the current challenges in life sciences and the medical tech industry. In the VC world over the last couple of years, across the board, we're talking about from, even with AI, even with clean tech, even with all that, we've been seeing a slowdown, a lack of capital and lack of depth of capital, and a pullback of risk tolerance as well. How do you see this happening in this field within life sciences? And what are struggles that you're going through yourself in your own companies or the companies that you work with? Maybe I'll throw it off to Nir, if that's all right.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, being patient-centric, as we all in this space, there's a big issue around aging, and essentially this is what Pulse Medica is trying to solve is eye disease. It's called through aging. And being an innovator, one of our challenges is investment. And so in our specific company, we're building both a diagnostic device and a treatment device. The diagnostic device is in the clinical stage. The treatment device is in the preclinical stage. And so specifically, one of the challenges in the medical device space, or generally in the med tech space, is investment in preclinical companies. I don't know if you guys have heard of the term the valley of death. And so this is the phase in the company where the company is trying to transform from being preclinical to clinical to do these clinical studies, and raising funds at that stage is extremely challenging. And specifically in the med device space, that in the last few years is becoming more and more challenging to raise funding.
Nir, thank you so much. And that's something that is quite resonant across Canada. We do have a lot of good technology, but the depth of the market is nothing like that of the United States or that of China. The good thing about Hong Kong is that it's the connection to that of China and the capital there. So is there a way to harness that? I'm going to throw that over to Emmanuel.
So is there a way to harness access to Chinese capital? I think the question is actually reversed nowadays, because I think earlier last year, A-share listing of pre-revenue companies is no longer allowed. And so you have all these big biotech companies in China that are pre-revenue that maybe raise actually a couple $100 million in 2021, 22, 23 that have no liquidity. They're unable to get out. And you have all these big, state SOE funds or even Hong Kong family offices that are unable to exit from their China biotech positions. And so a lot of them are actually scrambling to come to either Hong Kong or go to the US. And I think the Financial Times recently published a paper, article about how a lot of these Chinese, I think most of the licensing activity that happened in the U.S. this deal were licensing of Chinese assets. And so Chinese companies are actually relatively desperately trying to get out of China. And of course, there are good assets, and there are some quality, like some assets that are not as exciting, I will say. But in either case, the reality is China is not having an easy time at the moment, and especially not in the private equity and the VC space. And I think Hong Kong will need to have will play a catalytic role, I think, in 25 and 26 in order for making this happen. I think, if anything, first, we want Canadians to make money first. What do I mean by that? I mean, in order for there to be new FDI into China, in order to keep that cycle going again, the pension funds, the investors, the family offices that have already invested in China, have already invested in this part of the world, need to be able to have liquidity. I think the panel before us is a bunch of fund of funds and asset allogators. I think they know the difficulty in this. Is that I think just from my own exposure to fund of funds and family offices, like over 20% of the gross holdings that's stuck in companies in the private equity portfolio of family offices is in 3 companies, right? It's in Ant Finance, it's in ByteDance. It's in a couple companies that have basically been locking up most of the liquidity. And so to solve the issue of why aren't people investing in early stage biotech? Well, because they can't get their money back from prior investments. And so to go back to your question of how can Canadian companies enter, or get this Chinese access, I think. China is still the second largest market. You still have to come. You still have to figure out a path. But I think the first question we need to ask or try to resolve is how can we help generate liquidity again? And then after that, we need to then think about, practically landing companies into Hong Kong and going into China. There are grants. There are still pockets of funding. There are not many of them, but there are there. And I think it's all about adding value directly to Hong Kong, directly to, if you're willing to bring your manufacturing facility, I think, Jack, if you are part of it to Hong Kong or part of it to a province, I think the governments are very willing to support in the form of grants or maybe investments through related funds. But at the moment, it's very practical, yeah.
So I hear that, this is important, right? A lot of people come over from Canada, or if you're a company working in Hong Kong and you're attracting companies to garner investment in Hong Kong or in China, the answer is not as easy as it was before. That's the first step of acknowledging it. But how do you navigate that? That's something that's actually very important, I think, that I'm hearing from Emmanuel. The second part is that in the next couple of years will act as a true litmus test whether or not Hong Kong can act as an investment nexus for specialized investment, such as that of life sciences. We see such things as, Chapter 18A, Chapter 18C, these types of listings in the public market. Will that accelerate it or not? I think this is something that will be quite critical as the market, deepens in terms of, I would say, risk avoidance and as capital gets burnt out. But let's see where that goes. And I think we have to first acknowledge that before saying that it's an easy play for Canadians simply to come over to Asia blindly, come over to Hong Kong blindly and raise capital. It won't happen unless you understand and help them navigate that. So with that, I kind of want to ask Jack, you're here. Last time you were here in Hong Kong was 2008. That's a while back. You're here to raise funds because you are achieving some of these KPIs and goals. So how has it been in terms of fundraising? What are some of the difficulties? And where are the things that you find as opportunities where people actually can give you leverage to build your company and scale up here?
Yeah. Well, I would say actually that now is one of the best times for a company like mine, if you can believe it. And that's because of a change in the way that, let's say, the United States is largely driving this, but a change in the way that medical practitioners are reimbursed, right? And so what we're seeing now is, and it's now spreading into the Bay Area with. I think there's an organization called the Greater Bay Area Health Authority that is starting to spread value-based care. And the idea behind value-based care is, we no longer, as healthcare providers and physicians, bill over and over again for as many different procedures as we can and rack up costs. What we do is we negotiate with the insurer and say, we're going to share some of the risk with you of cost overruns. And when that happens, they're now looking at their costs. They're actually trying to do preventative measures to lower their costs. And what the insurer, the carrot that the insurer holds is, if you can spend less than the targets we negotiate, then we can share some of the difference. So what that's doing is, for a preventative technology like ours at HighLid, it's now in a post fee for service world. We're now something that's like that people and organizations really want, because we can provide that preventative care, reduce the costs for the healthcare provider, and actually increase their profits. And we just didn't see this level of prevention before, when the goal was to volume bill. Yeah.
Jack, thank you. So what I get is that, number one, you were able to do your research in Canada to understand the payment system of the healthcare system here in the Greater Bay Area beforehand. So that allowed you to navigate and understand, there are gaps that you can address, and your solution can actually get payment and scale payment in that way. And that's the thing I see that it's in life sciences and healthcare, is that whether it's US FDA working with HMOs that tend to be more, either reactionary care that's moving on to preventative care, or in the Health Canada side, on a provincial side, where there may be more focus on a preventative care codes, and how life sciences companies can tap into that is very important. So part of it is that, you as a startup investor, is to mitigate that risk, is to conduct the research, find evolving gaps in the regulation, and then come in and offer that solution to the system. Is that a way to kind of portray what you've been doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think our business would have been viable 10 years ago.
Okay.
I really don't. And so now it absolutely is. It's something that, so we're focusing on kidney care. And kidney care, for instance, the numbers, I'll use the United States as an example, because they have good numbers that they publish online. But Medicare spends 25% of its entire fee-for-service budget on kidney care. It's outstanding. So, there's now this with this change towards a capitated or value-based reimbursement plan. Which now 70 to 100% of kidney patients are treated under. There's a parallel industry to help the providers reduce their cost of care. And actually, there are about half a dozen unicorns, each looking after 100,000 or so patients, that have been funded by almost all of the top 10 healthcare insurers in the U.S., all of the world's largest, many of the world's largest dialysis companies, Alphabet, whatever. So there's this parallel private sector group helping the providers to benefit from this new system. And this is the ecosystem we're jumping into, as we can now be an equipment and service provider to these companies. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So I guess, in the end, is where is the money coming from, and it's evolving rapidly. So you have to be at the forefront of that. Now, we kind of jumped on from problems to finding out the solutions, and the solutions come from not just on research of the regulations, but also the solutions and innovations that are evolving in the life sciences field itself, addressing the demand that's growing in terms of population changes, in terms of wealth, in terms of supply chain changes in the Asia-Pacific region. So that's something that I kind of want to ask Emmanuel. Where are the areas that you see in life sciences where you want to focus, the innovations and solutions, and you actually want to accelerate and put in capital more on?
So my mandate is for Hong Kong, right? Whatever company I invest in must have some Hong Kong nexus. And to be honest, there are not enough high quality assets in Hong Kong. I think there are a lot of good, really good basic research. I think if you go to Google Scholar, you look at any scientific field, you click on it, one of the top 5 researchers will be from Hong Kong. Yeah, and we have fantastic research output. But are they ready for translation? Or are they structured well? Most of the time not. I think last year in 2024, I think we looked at about 300 to 400 companies and made 13 investments. 1/3 of which are local Hong Kong companies. 1/3 are actually overseas companies, 2 Canadian companies, right, that we're bringing to Hong Kong. And then the other third is Chinese companies that we're working with and bringing to Hong Kong. So to answer your question, I can't choose. I don't have the luxury of choosing. I think if you were in Boston, you can do a fund that's just in oncology, or do a fund that's just in medical robotics. But in Hong Kong, by the time I find a good patent for the right project with the good people running it, my pool whittles down to just a handful, and I don't have the luxury of choosing a certain type of innovation. Whereas I'm choosing, actually, is it good innovation? Is it good people? Is it the right product market fit for that innovation? And then by the time I find that, then I'm happy to support it. And not just me, but I think we have a CRO backing us, and so we really help them with the whole value chain of going from mice all the way to post clinical trial, even phase 4. We're able to help them the whole way. But fundamentally, I think there's a lot of buzz about AI. There's a lot of buzz about cell therapy, and what I take a more conservative approach, and I say I generally like to think about, what are 2 existing technologies that we know work independently? Can we combine it to make them work better in a new disease, in a new category, or maybe even taking an approved drug and applying it in an existing disease that doesn't have a solution right now? I think those are pretty good safe bets that I am more easy or that to make a decision on. So I do have some preferences for those types of deals, but fundamentally, not yet. I hope in 5 years I can do a fund that's just in oncology in Hong Kong, and that'd be a dream. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Emmanuel. That would be likewise. I would love to have that opportunity as the life sciences market grows in depth as well too. So, kind of want to bring that over to Nir, because your startup Pulse Medica, what it does with the femtolaser treatment and also the eye tracking, applies different types of technology in terms of computer vision, AI, and also different types of IoT sensors that's involved. And we haven't seen anything like that in our research in Greater China. And so how do you see the solution, growing or benefiting if it were to land in Asia? And how would you explain this to Asian investors or partners?
A great question. So in Asia, there's something called the myopia pandemic. So as people have essentially younger population who are exposed to computers, laptops at an earlier age, they're developing progressive myopia. And so what happens is the eye gets elongated, and then the vitreous starts pulling off the retina, which actually causes bigger and more severe floaters at earlier stages in life. And you could imagine young people who are exposed to screens, computers, and they have these big floaters who are bothering them at an earlier stage of their life, and there's no solutions. And so today, if you go to a doctor and you say, "Hey, doc, I have a floater, I want to get rid of it," especially if you're a young patient, they will tell you, "We have no solution for you," because they won't want to offer a surgical treatment, right? The risks are high, and you will get what's called cataracts at an earlier age. And so it's something that they wouldn't want to offer. And our solution would actually offer a treatment, a solution for a floater that's non-invasive and wouldn't necessarily cause cataracts at an earlier age. So there's a great opportunity actually specifically for the Asian countries because of this what's called myopia pandemic.
Nir, thank you. Now I'm going to engage the crowd really quickly. Who has to wear glasses here or wears contacts? Can you just raise your hand? Okay, this looks like 70% of the room. Okay, so it does seem to be the case here in Hong Kong as well. So your solution seems to be, at least, not only say proven, but the data to support that here in this room. Now, I kind of want to ask, Jack, do you see that, with kidney diseases, would there be do you see that in terms of the market, in terms of the demand over in Asia? You alluded to the fact that there's matching funding. Was there anything specifically garnered towards kidney diseases and also potassium detection in the supply chain that offers you, more of a likelihood of landing here and scaling here in Asia as well, providing a solution for the people here that need?
I certainly think so. The demographics are here as well. So you might know that, like in the East here, the actual rates of kidney disease are the highest in the world. Actually, the place with the highest full stop in the world is Taiwan. So it is a big problem. It's of course a growing problem, not only because the growing aged population, but also because of growing healthcare costs. And so I really do think that the models that we've seen from the U.S., the U.K., and are starting to be adopted here. And not just in the Greater Bay Area, but there have also been studies with different reimbursement mechanisms throughout mainland China as well. So and I happen to know of some, having been in the industry for a while, some suppliers of medical equipment to hospitals that are starting now to see reduced revenue from their hospital sales because now the push is to stay away from hospitals, right? And so this is our opportunity now. I think is in particular here. There's what I've read is there's a real problem with the scale of cost of hospital admissions in particular, right? And so what we want to do is reduce these hospital admissions. We're already starting to see a foothold of this different type of reimbursement in the East. We got the demographics, and I think the combination will be good for us. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jack. And so kind of want to broaden it out onto a third topic is talking about emergent trends that are in the life sciences market that specifically in your fields that you believe are also investment opportunities, partnership opportunities. And, when you're actually working in, your own specific fields, the words AI and all that are, in fact, oftentimes buzzwords. Are these things at the forefront of it? Are there other themes, that are coming at the forefront in the next 5 to 10 years that you will bet your money on? So I kind of want to, pass it over to Nir, what your thoughts are.
Thanks, Joseph. So I'd like to actually take it a little bit outside of the AI ML. I do think that those are generally, big buzzwords that everybody likes to use. Specifically in the world of ophthalmology, there's a couple of issues. One, where there's a big opportunity is that strategics are fighting over the same market share. They keep cannibalizing on each other. They're treating the same diseases for years and years, and they struggle to grow the markets. So then a big opportunity is to go after big need that it's completely untapped. An example, eye floaters, right? Nobody's treating that. So that's one thing. The other thing is also if you're looking from the physician side, so the world of ophthalmology is moving towards a place where you get longer and longer treatments that would, so for example, in retinal disease, people get injections, and these injections today are happening on a monthly basis in order to stop bleeding, just as an example. And so the world is moving towards injections that are longer lasting. So now you're going to have in a few years those retina docs that today are doing injections on a monthly basis. Now they're doing injection once a year, once every 2 years. And so they're going to be struggling to actually get the same income as they're doing today. And so finding alternatives and newer treatments that they could offer and can offset their existing revenue would be beneficial. So this is where innovation like Pulse Medica in this particular case is helping both the patients, the doctors, and the strategics. And so I think this is a very exciting space to be.
Nir, thank you so much. So I do hear that personalized medicine, precision medicine, are some things that are, quite relevant and that we should, put more capital in. And also, within your field, AI is beyond just LLM. AI has actually been in existence and utilized as a tool, in computer vision, computer imaging, drug discovery within life sciences. That seems to have a much broader and much deeper impact as well, too. And companies such as, Alphabet, that Jack, you mentioned, have already put in capital much, much more than what they've invested in LLM over the past 2 decades. So can you give us a little bit of clarity on what your thoughts are on emergent trends within life sciences on your side?
I would say if we talk specifically about AI, what I see is in my little world of, let's say, remote care for patients and helping to keep those patients healthy and out of hospital, is that a lot of them do use AI, but they're using limited data sets, right? And so what we really need, AI is useless without the underlying valuable data. And so what our company is trying to provide, for instance, is something that's beyond the things we have at the moment, which is the glucose meter, the connected blood pressure cuff, the connected weigh scale, and there's not much else in the home, right? And so these are, what we will have is a new data stream, longitudinal data stream, for the first time that you really can apply some reasonable AI to stratify risk in patients, rather than, for instance, going and scraping old lab test data or something like that. So I do absolutely think there's a place for AI, but we need to provide a lot more data than we're giving it at the moment.
Jack, thank you. Kind of want to now ask Emmanuel then. So, Jack mentioned data streams, garbage in, garbage out, cleaning up data streams, ensuring that, the regulatory processes internationally, crossing borders, also facilitate better data streams so that we can harness that for, better discovery, better innovation, and better patient care. How do you see that evolving within this field?
I think data sets are going to become more siloed, actually. And I think it'll be okay. Meaning, if data is from China, keep it there. If data is from Canada, keep it there. That's fine. But what are these models, what are these data sets informing? And can those conclusions, are they applicable in other geographies, in other patient pools, in other genotypes of people? I think it's a matter of governance, actually, as well. I think moving forward, your population data is going to be one of the most valuable assets of governments and of companies, and so you want to protect that. You don't want to make it completely open source. You don't want to make it completely available to everybody. And I think me as myself, I have a lot of data as me as an individual that I don't want other people to have as well. So I think it's okay. I think there's a lot of this fear about data being transferred, and there's this push that we must make data more accessible to everybody.
Can I interject with that?
Please, yeah.
What do you think then? We've been hearing over the last decade, data federalization, on-prem data harnessing, off cloud. Are those measures that medical data, companies, governments can harness to actually tap into that better? Or are those just, again, I wouldn't call them buzzwords, but halfway solutions that don't protect patient data enough, but then at the same time do not give drug researchers, medical researchers enough data to actually implement and the clinical trials in that way across borders, across provinces, across states?
I think the current system is sufficient. And right now, we don't have these huge data sets and huge data servers with everybody's data in it, right? I think right now, let's just take medical devices. Anything, Jack and near here. The medical device single audit program, right, which is between Canada, U.S., Japan, Brazil, and one more company. Australia, yeah. It's this. They have an agreement where if one regulatory agency audits and approves it, then the others will have this accelerated approval system. So I have one company that is getting it in Japan and planning to launch their product within 2 months in Canada, and I think that's fine. I don't think we need to necessarily make everybody a click and go and so. Further to that is then for the good of research, right? For the good of academia and the good of the public, I think everything should be purpose-driven. Meaning, why do you want that data set? What for? I think right now in the ethics board, we recently just looked at a couple cases where there are researchers in actually Canada, Australia, Hong Kong that want to share pediatric data sets on HSCT. So like post stem cell transplant recovery data. They want to share this data between the three researchers between 3 countries, and we're like, sure, we'll approve it just for this disease for this research question. And I think we have our own independent decision-making ability, as does the Canadian site, as does the Australian site. And I think it's okay. I think it's sufficient. I don't think we need to particularly make it more transparent. But making sure those governance systems are in place and people's autonomy and sovereignty and data privacy are respected, then I think it's fine.
So good governance, offering granularity on how data is handled would be some of the things that we see as progression within this field. So right now we're at 12 minutes. I kind of want to open it up to the floor.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick question around women's specific health data. Women were not included in medical studies until 1993. So much of the information that we have about health, disease, and solutions to health is male-centric, meaning it doesn't apply to female bodies. We have an opportunity with all the new data that we're pulling from wearable devices and connected devices to captures women's data, and I'm wondering from your perspective, do you have this on your radar? Are you deaggregating the data for women versus men? And what's your view on this in general?
Maybe I can ask the 2 startups if you guys have any opportunities, whether if it's women in terms of data handling, or else on the other hand, we also see ethnic minorities with different genetic profiles that tend to offer, especially in kidney, liver diseases, or oncology as well. Do you look at that and do you see opportunities there?
Yeah, we certainly do. So late-stage kidney disease is actually a man's illness. But the majority of people with kidney disease are women. And so what we're doing now as a company is we're starting with, going after, for lack of a better term, going after where we can make the big difference first, and especially in terms of helping with the enormous cost of those late-stage kidney patients. But what we want to do after that is help the earlier stage kidney patients, and that's really where we will start engaging more and more women, and because again they're more predisposed to kidney disease, but as well as the ethnic minorities, and we certainly see that, and we see in North America certainly there's also there's a lot of discussion about discrimination and how that affects the treatment of things like kidney disease. And I think that we're trying to develop kidney markers that even there are kidney markers that are used today. The main one is actually has racial correction factors for it and everything. So we're looking at can we help earlier stage kidney disease in a way that is going to be more inclusive and not and hopefully not involve a health system that is that has been for years geared towards the old man with kidney problems. Yeah.
Jack, thank you. Neer, do you have any insights on your side?
Honestly, I think this is a great question, and I don't know if it really applies in our case. We do have actually two active clinical studies, and there's nothing in our case that would preclude women from participating in the studies outside of pregnant women in general. Just, I think, generally speaking, it's typically an exclusion criteria, but outside of that, I think if we look at our data, I guess it's going to be about 50-50 in terms of women and men.
Thank you, Neer. And I know that, Emmanuel, there's a company that we also co-invested in that covers liver disease, which predominantly, number one, is male-oriented. Number two is that the data streams or the data that's captured in Canada is very different from that of the data that is necessary to be used over here in Greater China as well. Do you see that, by offering, better data capture for underserved communities or ethnic groups or gender groups, is it necessary? Does it offer startups the opportunity to really hone in when we talk about opportunities in precision medicine, opportunities in personalized medicine as well?
I think for non-gender specific diseases, like in general, the question or the realization of a difference in women or ethnic minorities is usually that's interesting moment. We don't go looking for it. And it's a matter of afterwards, and then we process the data, and then we go, oh, okay, there seems to be something here, and I think that's one reason why, as Neer just mentioned, it's a part of the inclusion criteria. You have to have women in your clinical studies nowadays, and it's pretty much a foregone requirement. So I think as well. Then what about women-specific investments? Right. What about? I think in the past couple of years, if you look at the data, that is it's specifically of investments into the women's health space, that it's been increasing quite a lot. It's never before has there been this many investments in this space, and I myself have a couple of investments in this space as well. It's the drugs that are for addressing things like endometriosis and endometritis. There's been no innovation for 20 years. We're using the same solutions, and so it's half the population we're talking about. And so it's a good business opportunity. So yeah, I think all investors are beginning to realize that there's a huge market opportunity here, and we should definitely be more intentional about this whole inclusion. Yeah.
Emmanuel, thank you, and thank you for asking the question. And yes.
I guess this question is for the whole panel. One thing with general investment in medtech, same problem applies to clean tech. It has a long runway. It's difficult. It's deep tech. And how do you see the sort of the challenge with when you want to build? I would call it real technology, let's say, because we're getting a lot of keywords, we get a lot of buzzwords. We heard the speech right before this in terms of where everyone's going, sort of the traditional stuff, real estate, energy, whatever. How would that apply, like for early stage startups in coming into tech? The risk, sort of, because early on you're trying to you have clinical testing. How do we see the challenge? Like how do we prevent? How do we actually get these companies to grow? Do you see opportunities for them, given how a lot of let's say for whatever reason, when you say AI, that's vacuuming a lot of money outside of our kit. There isn't a lot going to other areas. Everyone's looking for the quick thing. It's also the turnaround seems to be because everyone thinks you had a few laptops, you have something, you have the model, but that's not the case with medtech. How do we see navigating that, or for early stage startups, companies who are trying to do this? What do you see the opportunities are? What do you think are especially in the next few years? And I guess in this case, especially when we're talking about Hong Kong and say Asia, how can we manage that?
Maybe I can just kind of explain it from my side, is that when we look at life sciences and medtech, we look at it, maybe there's B2C and there's B2B as well too. I think within the panel here, all of us are involved on the B2B side. Now, with that applies to much of a longer tenor for liquidity, exits, etc. But over the last 3 decades to 4 decades, there's a strong depth of market. I mean, what's happening right now is that, say over in the US, there's a JP Morgan conference. Investors are over there looking to invest in companies at various stages, seed, A, B, C, D, pre-IPO, all there. The thing about life sciences, especially on the B2B side, is that there are buyers and there are sellers along the different tracks of the market based on, say, for example, KPIs such as clinical research, based on data streams. But these are all very, very much focused by region, by regulatory capture, by localized environments. And so you have to know, if you're an investor, who your buyer is, where do you build those operational KPIs in the next round as you raise in tandem. When you develop those KPIs over 18 months, who are you going to find the next lead on? How are you going to exit to before it's pre-revenue? That's a difference, what we find, compared to that of consumer-based technology, where there tends to be much more of a generalized market for that. There's pros and cons to that. You see much higher multiples as well. But then when people say that's high risk, it's high operational and technical risk. But that's where due diligence comes in, and it's less rolling the dice, it's more about the research. That's where we operate very comfortably. And I think that's how we look at it from Salterton's perspective, but maybe you can share a little bit from your side.
Yeah, I have a good analogy. Well, I think it's good. It's that, what we do, it's a 20% investment, 80% Sotheby's. I need to know who's in the market to buy a Picasso, who's in the market to buy a Degas, who wants Wesley Thompson, and then it's the same. We can sort of understand which pharmaceutical companies are looking for what type of assets, which products failed phase 3, which products, maybe as Jack was telling me, Astra is looking for a solution for their drug to detect potassium in patients, because right now the only way is to go back into the clinic, get a blood test, and go back. Instead, now he's got a solution for Astra for patients to immediately test their potassium at the point of care, right? And so, really, it's our job to understand who in the market, who is in the market for what, and how can we offload some of our position at the appropriate time. So for me, I'm very early in my investing, right? Angel to seed, is really my sweet spot. I am constantly thinking about who in the market would be a good A investor, a B investor, who wants what type of investment, and when they come along, maybe I sell some of my cost, and I keep the upside. I think that's just good investment discipline from my perspective. But that's a luxury that I have as an early stage investor, whereas a lot of the later stage investors, which I mentioned at the very beginning of this panel, are having trouble because they can't offload because there's no exit, there's no buyer. So I think that'll remain a problem, I think, for later stage healthcare specific funds. But for earlier stage like me, I think I'm still okay to wait to ride this difficult period through. But otherwise, I think this whole liquidity issue is also a matter of portfolio risk management. I think as a manager of money and as a manager of scientific risk, you need to build failure into your portfolio, and if you expect the majority to fail, or how do you offset that? There's a way to calculate the risk and offset your exposure and liquidity risk, but very much so. I think diversification and deliberate, some deliberate strategies for how we can control our IRR, so we don't look too bad to our shareholders as well, right? So yeah, Jack, would you like to interject?
Oh, I don't have much to add really, but I would say that as a diagnostics company, we would also look to to expert guidance from people like Joseph, and now I was just saying to his team, it's so nice now that we have a team to work with for future rounds, where when in your first round you're all on your own, right? But then we're also thinking, it is a difficult regulated market we're going into. What if we can start with an unregulated market? What if you can start with the veterinary market? And so this is something we have to look at. Can we rely on private capital less and start our revenue earlier? And we did this actually with the previous company, and the veterinary space is unregulated, and something like 30% of all cats get kidney disease. So it's there's actually, if you see a lot of the successful diagnostics companies launch first in the veterinary market. So you have to be a little creative as well. Yeah.
All right, so I hope that answers the question. We're 2 minutes overrun, so I want to thank everyone on the panel and everyone who asked the questions.